I, on campaigning for this office which I hold, gave the population of Trinidad and Tobago an assurance that in conducting public business under a government which I would lead, that I would be upfront and forthright with the population and would ensure that the decisions that we make are what you see is what you get. There's nothing under the table. And I have no intention of resigning from that commitment. And that is why I'm here now. Because tomorrow, I leave early in the morning for Grenada to take part in the CARICOM Heads of Government meeting, which was scheduled, as you have been aware, for some time. The meeting takes place tomorrow, Wednesday and Thursday, and I return here on Friday. As usual, under my administration, when I return from this trip, all things being equal, I expect that there'll be a press conference on Friday morning where I report to you on what happened in Grenada. But this afternoon, I am sure that there's an appetite and a requirement for me to make myself available to you so that I could tell you what I need to tell you in further clarification for what has been happening, and you may have questions which you might have brought which I may want to respond to. Firstly, I want to return to a place where I was at the last press conference held a few days ago. I was at pains to point out to you, the media, and by extension the national population, why I was taking the action that I was taking with respect to the return of Ms. McDonald to the cabinet. Let me repeat what I said then for the benefit of those who may not have paid attention or who may not have understood what I had said. I said then that when allegations were being made about Ms. McDonald in 2016, I listened to the allegations, and many of them were allegations that I was familiar with, but there was one aspect of the package of allegations which caused me to act in the way I acted in 2016. And that was the allegation about Ms. McDonald's conduct with respect to the Ministry of Housing. And the reason why I was driven to take the action at that time, notwithstanding the package of allegations, was that she was the Minister of Housing. And those allegations concerning the Ministry of Housing caused me to have her step aside so that she could not be in the way to interfere with any investigation that would have been underway. The other allegations pretty much took care of themselves. One of which was the body of allegations about her constituency office and the requirement for complying with some parliamentary regulations. It was never my intention to remove her from the cabinet on that basis. Otherwise, I'll have to remove half the government. And I was half the opposition for that matter, because they're now in the opposition. Those allegations were such that they were not, as they were being presented, as breaches of any law or regulations at the time. There were other allegations that she was hiring people who lived abroad while they were earning monies in her office. Again, that was demonstrated as not to be so, even before any finding was made in any investigation. And of course, there was the other allegation which dated back to the Manning administration with the Calabar Foundation. My action in 2016 had to do with the Ministry of Housing, where it was alleged that the now minister, the current minister at the time of 2016, was involved at some stage in buying HTC houses and facilitating purchase. And I went through that last time at the last press conference. Having taken the decision to bring back Ms. McDonald to the cabinet, I was fully aware that there would have been points of views to the contrary. One, that even though an allegation has been dispensed with, there will be people who will still believe that you ought to be penalized because something is there. Or that there in fact are ongoing investigations and nothing should happen. I was quite prepared to defend my position, and I still am quite prepared to defend that position. Because what are the facts? The facts are that with respect to the letter of October 2016, the Integrity Commission pointed out, and I'll give you copies of those letters this afternoon, because apparently some people have not seen them. There's one person raising a question now as to whether I spoke the truth to the population. I'm going to speak the same truth again. The letter to Ms. McDonald of October 2016 identified and itemized specific allegations which the Integrity Commission received with great aplomb from certain quarters, which the Commission upon investigation found no basis to hold Ms. McDonald accountable for any wrongdoing. And they itemized them 1, 2, 3, that the Commission has found no basis. That particular letter, the last line in that letter indicated, having exonerated her on these substantial allegations, very serious criminal charges, the Commission mentioned that we are looking at some other thing without mentioning what the other is. I presume that that other, and I'm only presuming here because the Commission, while specifying where they have exonerated her on specific allegations, made no mention of what this other is. I presume it might be referring to the Calabar, because I see in the press that is being said that I should know that it is the Calabar investigation that's underway. And I say to you, the Calabar investigation, the Calabar matter, was investigated by the Integrity Commission, a matter of the Patrick Manning administration. The Commission issued a position to Ms. McDonald that they have found nothing wrong in the face of those allegations. There was a government subsequent to the Manning government for 5 years that was quite hostile to all of us in the PNM and Ms. McDonald, that found nothing to further it. Then the government changed again under my administration, and it was said that we have new information on this Calabar matter, and that formed part of the package of investigations, and the Integrity Commission is investigating it. And of course, that investigation of the same matter, I as Prime Minister, responsible for putting people in or out of the cabinet, I took the position that if it is the Calabar matter which dated back to the Manning government, which up to now the Integrity Commission cannot conclude whether the person has a charge to answer or not, that I will reinstate her. And I made it quite clear on the day when I made that press conference that in the event that anything comes up in the future, I will not hesitate to deal with it. That was the position. And let me tell you why I took that position and why I can take that position, and which the country must pay attention to the position I've taken. One, it is this, that in Trinidad and Tobago, unfortunate as it is, there's an Integrity Commission that has no integrity. And therefore, when I look at the overall situation of this particular matter, in my own experience and the record of the Integrity Commission, I cannot but understand that it very well could be a situation where the Integrity Commission is playing in the politics of Trinidad and Tobago, and people are being hurt in the process. Let me explain that to you. The record of this country will show that this said Integrity Commission, which is now saying to me that I exonerate this member on all these charges identified, but there's a other unnamed matter that I'm looking at, is the same commission that ended prematurely an investigation into the email matter, resulting in resignation from the said commission under allegation of improper conduct against the commission by members of the Integrity Commission itself. And that action of the Commission is an action which resulted in a letter being made available to the then Prime Minister, who was able to go to the Parliament and move a unique motion which has never been moved in any other Parliament for 100 years, and resulted in the opposition leader being expelled from the Parliament on the basis of a letter provided by the Integrity Commission. It's against that background that I took the decision that if the Commission cannot tell me what they are holding on to over Marlene McDonald's head, while they've exonerated her on the specific actions that they have investigated, that I will put her back in the cabinet, and whenever they are able to determine what exactly they're investigating and what she is guilty of, I will then act. And that was my position, and I stand in front of the people of Trinidad and Tobago on that. I stand on that because we have a history, we have experience, and we know exactly how far down the totem pole we have fallen in this country. So I'm not prepared to accept from anybody that I have misled the population or have lied to the population. What I did was an action that I was prepared to defend. And let me go further. Being under an Integrity Commission investigation does not automatically result in a resignation or a dismissal from office. The record will show that I myself, as a minister of government in the Manning government, allegations were made against me, serious allegations. It triggered 2 investigations. One was an Integrity Commission investigation, so I was under Integrity Commission investigation for criminal conduct. 2, I was under a commission of inquiry for the same matter, the very same matter. What was the outcome? I stood my ground. I told the population that those who were making the allegations were not speaking the truth. I had done nothing wrong, and therefore I had not accepted any responsibility for those allegations as fact and truth, and I held my ground, and the Integrity Commission investigated. What was the outcome of that? At the end of it all, when it was all said and done, the Integrity Commission was able to say to me, we have found no basis to support the allegation that you had done anything wrong. That was the finding after the investigation. But that didn't prevent the Commission from sending a package of lies to the DPP, which they couldn't defend in the court. And when I took the Commission to the court, the Commission had to resign in disgrace for having conducted themselves improperly against me as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. That's my experience. And secondly, there was a commission of inquiry into the matter, and the Commission could find absolutely no evidence of wrongdoing on my part. Yet, the report that came in stated the following: whatever Dr. Rowley did showed a lack of discretion. I called a press conference on that day and took issue with that, where a commission that was looking into my own conduct, finding nothing wrong, could say whatever. That was the finding. Whatever I did showed a lack of discretion. And I was prepared to fight that too. So, against that background, I'm now being advised by the former Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, and the country is being advised about my fitness for Prime Minister, against the background that I am mishandling these matters. Well, I want to tell the population that this government's approach in treating with crime and allegations of misconduct on the part of public officials, our position is quite different to that of the last government. With respect to the treatment of allegations of the conduct of public officials, from captain to cook, the Integrity in Public Life Act is the legislation that most poignantly focuses on the conduct of public officials as they carry out their duties as public officials. That piece of legislation, in spirit and in letter, expects 2 things to happen. One, if allegations are made against any person fairness requires that the commission investigate those allegations thoroughly, and if it is found that any such person would have done anything wrong, the commission will then proceed to have them held accountable for what they've been alleged to have done. But there's a very important second part, that if you are in public office and an allegation is made against you, which is so detrimental to your reputation and probably your freedom, that the commission would also treat you in such a way that you will feel that the allegations were investigated, and if you are innocent, with dispatch, the commission will tell the population that these allegations are found to be baseless, and not set about to have something hanging over your head indefinitely so as to affect you politically. Unfortunately, this has been a very dark story in Trinidad and Tobago, the role of the Integrity Commission in matters of political investigations where people have been harmed by the actions of the commission. So my intervention in the Marlene McDonald case is that all the allegations are made, they're all out there, and the commission has ruled on the substantial body of them, right? And where they have not concluded, I don't know what they're ruling on, but I'm saying to you, I came to the conclusion that it is quite likely that the commission is engaging in what it has engaged in before. I am not in any way making that the basis of my decision, but I'm saying that was a consideration, and we can't say we don't know that. The bottom line is that the government, in dealing with crime, we are not about the optics of crime for a few moments of success. For a few moments of success. We are about putting our agencies and our institutions in a way to sustainably respond to the criminal element. And that is why the successes that the police would have had recently in finding perpetrators of serious crime, which were in the news recently, are matters of satisfaction to us. And of course, if one looks back, you would see that the same government, the same Prime Minister who's advising me now, and who is telling the country how unfit I am to be Prime Minister, their approach to dealing with crime was a state of emergency, for which they got credit for a few weeks. The outcome of that state of emergency is that up to today, looking in today's papers, you will see an individual called Soldier Barry receiving $170-something thousand of taxpayers' money arising out of the developments of the extension of the state of emergency. Let me remind you, when the emergency was coming to an end, by way of the period of time, excuse me, by way of the period of time for which it should have lasted, we awoke one day to find that there were allegations against certain individuals for engaging in a plot to assassinate the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Remember that story? Well, Soldier Barry's $174,000 is as a result excuse me. Excuse me. The $174,000 which the court has now awarded to Soldier Barry is because he was picked up in that arrangement, and in the court, the judge ruled that the evidence supplied to explain that action of the government of the day was woefully inadequate. And as a result of that, the individual is now to receive a substantial payment from the taxpayer. Let me remind you, and let me remind the former Prime Minister who's advising me now, there are 44 other cases like that before the court, resulting out of their approach to fighting crime. through the state of emergency. And what is worse, the state, in attempting to put up a defense in these matters, the current Attorney General of this government has asked, by writing to the former Prime Minister and the former Attorney General, asking them to provide testimony as required by the court as to the reason for the state of emergency and the processes used in arresting people. Those two areas needed to be explained to the court by persons who took the decision. And the reason why those two persons are the two who the court would want to hear from in this matter, in defending the taxpayers' interest, is because the cabinet is made up by the Prime Minister and the Attorney General. Everybody else is extra. A cabinet is not formed unless there's a Prime Minister and an Attorney General. They are required to provide testimony as to the decision that was taken to have the state of emergency and the process that was used to execute it. You know what they've done? They've written back in identical fashion, the two individuals, to the Attorney General, refusing to cooperate with the state's case in these 44 matters. What does that tell you? And where is that heading? And how much is the state going to have to pay to all these individuals who now are claiming that their rights were infringed by virtue of how the crime fighting went under the last government? And those are the people who are now ruling on my fitness and ruling on this government's ability to fight crime and taking issue with a decision which I have made, which I am quite prepared to defend. And that brings me now to the matter of Ms. McDonald's recent removal, which, as far as I am concerned, is a quite new and separate matter to all that I've said just now. This government will retain its ability to speak with moral and other authority in its fight against crime and criminality in Trinidad and Tobago. And to do so, we will zealously preserve our ability to do so by ensuring that we don't compromise ourselves in any way. And when I speak or take actions on this matter, suffice it to say that I speak as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, head of the cabinet, and as Chairman of the National Security Council, who more than likely would have a bit more information than anybody else in Trinidad and Tobago. And the decisions I make are decisions made against that background. I take your questions. You have no questions?
Prime Minister.
Okay, I'll wait for the mic. No, take the mic. No, I would like the public to hear what questions you're asking. This is wrong. We don't have a mic that the media can use? Okay, if you keep your questions short, I'll repeat them for the public because I want the public to hear what questions you're asking me so that the answers can fit the question. And that is entirely a logical conclusion. But if I hadn't got out of my bed this morning, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be, as I said, the decision to reappoint Ms. McDonald was based on my analysis of the situation in total, and a willingness to defend it as I am in a position to do now. So that is not something that I'm backing away from. I did not expect everyone to agree, but I expect that most people in this country would be fair-minded and would be of the view that when you look at the overall picture, especially since I went on to tell you when the allegations were made, I didn't just remove Miss McDonald because allegation was made about her. Because if you do that, all you have to do is to get, what, 5 allegations, and the government fall, you know. If you're telling me that once allegations are made, the minister must be removed by the Prime Minister, that means all you want is 5 allegations against 5 ministers, and the government done. But I'm saying to you, when I took the decision to remove her at the time, it was based on my understanding of the requirement for it to happen, because she was the Minister of Housing and there were serious allegations about her conduct at housing which had not then been investigated. The other allegations, one of it, I went over it a while ago. One was the old Calabar investigation, which is apparently will go on forever. And the other one is the hiring of people in her office, which half of the parliament was engaged in. So that was my position. So her coming and her going, or her going and her return, as far as I was concerned as Prime Minister, had to do with whether or not there was substance to those allegations about the Ministry of Housing where she was the sitting minister. Dissatisfaction with the developments on Friday resulted in certain discussions I had with Ms. McDonald and my decision not to have her as a member of the cabinet. I go no further at this time. Still the of what? This is not a party business, and this is not a party matter, this is a government matter. We make a distinction between the party that put the government in office and the government that conducts public business. I know there is disappointment in many quarters, and disappointment is normal in life, but this is a government matter and is not a party matter. Or should I put it differently? It is first and foremost a government matter, a government decision, and there may be considerations and sentiments expressed from the party, but the most important thing here, this is a governmental action dealing with a governmental officer.
Talk about developments that arose out of Friday. Would in particular have to do with the presence of Mr. Berg, Ms. McDonald's swearing in?
It certainly did.
Would you want to elaborate further?
No, I'm not elaborating any further on that matter.
Maybe I can ask again. Sorry, I have to question on this. Okay, so you admitted that it had to do with the presence of Mr. Berg. You were there at the swearing in as well. When you saw Mr. Berg come in, what was your reaction? And second, given that the office of the president almost insinuated that, suggested that Ms. McDonald had broken their protocol.
I will confine myself to my area of responsibility and my area of activity. I mean, the circumstances surrounding those developments resulted in the cancellation of Ms. McDonald's appointment back to the cabinet, and what the President's office says or does in reaction to it, I am sure the President's office would have handled it appropriately, and I would not want to comment on that.
Would there be any further investigation to maybe there may be more links between Ms. McDonald and the individuals who are accusing her?
I don't know that there's any investigation that is taking place. There was sufficient information available for a rejection of that development, and I would want to say this though, that given the a lot of people have spoken since that development from all quarters, and when you put all of the information together, certain imperatives arise, not the least of which is that there is need for tightening up on the observance of protocols, and that there be more watertight security systems at a place like President House. Because if people can tell you that they enter President's House without proper authorization, and it's a question as to who got who in there, clearly then there is need for us all to review that situation so that these developments ought never to happen again.
Ms. McDonald remain deputy leader.
Yes, no action has been taken to remove her from that post, but let's get it straight. A deputy leader in the PNM has one singular function. It is not a overarching status symbol. It's to assist the political leader. That's all the deputy does, assist the political leader. We have 4 of them, and we deal with our deputies at convention time.
What was our conversation with her yesterday? I did not understand. It seemed as if she would remain deputy leader, you will still work together. Going forward with Ms. McDonald, have you all had a big falling out and will be a
This, my relationship and my conversation with Ms. McDonald was very civil and very forthright, as it has always been.
I want to go back to some of the things in the commission. Sorry. It appears as though in your conversation you were not clear on exactly what issues Ms. McDonald was being investigated on by the Integrity Commission. Did you think that there was a responsibility to clarify exactly what issues the Integrity Commission was looking at, and also the fact that the police are investigating her still? What, if even you chose to ignore the Integrity Commission, what of the investigation by the police?
Let me explain that. I think it's the opposite. Not only that I wasn't clear, in fact it's the opposite. I think I had a clear view of what was happening. And it is because I thought I had a clear view why I took the decision, not the other way around. Now, I understand what was being said in the number of allegations. And if you go back to when she was removed, you will see what the allegations were. I looked at the package of exonerations, and I also saw the comment about we are looking at the exact words are in the text, some other thing. The question of this other, this undefined other, caused me to wait to see what it was. Remember, I saw this document in October of 2016. I did not immediately act. The other was still there. It is now what, July, end of June when I acted, and the other generated no further consideration. And you may also remember that in all of this, Ms. McDonald reported that even up to the exoneration, as listed in the letter of October 2016, no person had spoken to her. So in other words, the nature of those investigations, well, the commission could have dismissed those allegations even without speaking to Ms. McDonald. That's what we're dealing with. That's what we're dealing with, that package of investigation where the commission could have dismissed all these points without even speaking to her. So the residue, let's put it this way, the residue could not be any more serious than the substance. And I view that other as residue. And if that residue involved Calabar, going back to the Manning government, I took that in a certain way. And as for the police investigation, it was the same allegations that the police was investigating. The same allegations. And therefore, if the Integrity Commission with all its powers would have investigated without reference to Ms. McDonald and determined that there was no substance to it. I said on the last Friday, or whenever I spoke, that in the event that they come up with anything, I will not hesitate to act. But given the fact that police investigations are legendary in Trinidad and Tobago, what am I being asked to do? To expect that they will be different or have different investigations to the Integrity Commission? Maybe, maybe not.
What do you tell people who say that your judgment in choosing to ignore or to not take on board these two investigations was flawed?
That is not a correct statement. If I didn't take the investigations on board, I would not have removed Ms. McDonald in March 2016. I said, I'm going to say it for a third time, it was the investigation into the allegations made against her at the Ministry of Housing that caused me to ask her to step aside from the portfolio so that that investigation can proceed without any interference on her. And I'm satisfied now that that investigation has produced nothing.
But I don't know that we know that.
Well,
the Integrity Commission is not investigating the issue of the HD because the exoneration did not refer to the question of HDC homes. It referred to some Mr. McCletchy and payments to him and so on. So I am not clear that...
Let's put it this way. I'm a little clearer on it than you are, and I take responsibility for the actions of bringing back Ms. McDonald. I take responsibility for that based on my analysis of the overall situation. I don't expect everyone will agree with me on that. I had a decision to make, and I made it. In the fullness of time, we will all be clearer on this matter. But for the moment, I took that decision, and I take responsibility for that decision. And I separate that decision from the operations of her swearing in.
But with the knowledge of hindsight, are you prepared to admit that you made a mistake bringing back Ms. McDonald?
Well, had I known that it would have ended up in this way, had I known that the swearing in would have become the national conversation, I may not have done that. Had I known that the swearing in became an issue. Because that is what we're dealing with now. What happened at the swearing in? That was the issue. I mean, if I had a crystal ball to look into it and say, if I appoint her, the swearing in to the post will result in this, clearly I wouldn't have. But the bottom line is, I had no way of knowing that the swearing in would have resulted in this situation. However, that's a different question to whether, in fact, I should have brought her back. I made a decision based on my overall view of the landscape, and of course, there are those who agree and those who don't agree. Okay?
Yeah. Well, I guess the people who claim, well, if you listen to the pronouncements of people like Rowley Singh and the former Prime Minister, who say that it reflects on your leadership and that you should resign now. I think one of the points that they are saying is that there were so many warnings that you had, apart from what was going on with the integrity. I don't
really want to spend any time on those two people. They have their point of view, and others, but those particular two people, they have their point of view, and they have had it for other reasons and for a long time. I have given you the basis on which I have taken the decision. I do not act capriciously, and I dare say in haste. I made deliberate judgments, and along the way, in this area, there will be pros and there will be cons. And not everything you do will work out the way you've planned it. And the last person to be talking about judgment is Kamla Prasad Bisesa. Because we had her as Prime Minister in this country. And it is because of her good, consistent, good judgment why today she's there. I could point to a litany of situations, but I'm not judging my performance by her. I'm simply saying the advice being given is not coming from a quarter of any great experience or talent.
Could I ask a question on the security now at the President's office? The fact is that there were two persons who have been described as community leaders who were guests of Ms. McDonald. One name is not on the list, but one name was on. Does the President have within his knowledge or in his office, does he receive, for example, security reports that will enable him, if a guest list comes to him, to make some kind of determination that some bells will ring and say...
It is my understanding that some elements of the national security apparatus would communicate the special branch. So, but it is not for, again, let us not, when you get down to the personal as to what the President should or shouldn't have done, I'm not really going there at all. Where I stopped when I spoke a little while ago is whether the protocols of going to the President's office should be more rigorous, and this is not a matter for the President per se as a person. This is a matter for the President's office. And if what has happened there as described is what has happened, the various versions, clearly there is need for an improvement in those protocols being more robust and more faithfully followed.
Yeah, but the point I was making had to do with the security of the President, whoever he may be. And in other words, if Mr. Burke's name had been given, in fact, to the President's office, I don't know that the issue of his presence there would have been irrelevant. People would have, in fact, still talked about it, and it would still have presented an issue of the security of the President.
And I agree, and that's why...
If the President's office is in a position to vet even a guest list that it gets, if it gets the kind of security information from the agencies.
If it gets that information, the office would be in a position to do so. But I don't know that such information would be available in all circumstances. And the statement made by President House is as much as we have to go on this for this particular development. But clearly, there was an issue here, and the issue requires some review so as to ensure that that kind of development doesn't fall upon us again.
Dr. Rowley, I'm still unsure as to exactly why these numbers went off.
You're unsure?
I'm still unsure because I'd like to ask you, is it because of the reported break-in protocol at the President's House, security protocol, or was it the fact of who Mr. Burke is and her affiliation with him? Was it her affiliation with Mr. Burke, or somebody like Mr. Burke, somebody that people call community leaders or whatnot, or was it the fact that she...
All right, since you're having difficulty, I have to assume that the rest of the country is having difficulty as well, because you are an intelligent young man. Let me spell it out for you. It is very easy for one to say and to remember that in the issue of responding to crime and criminal conduct in Trinidad and Tobago, that there's a view in many quarters that the government's inability, and not only just government, but other governments, inability to properly respond to the threat of criminality in Trinidad and Tobago is because of a closeness and an association between government personnel and persons who engage in criminal conduct. And nothing that supports that is to be encouraged in any form or fashion. Is that clear enough for you?
will there be any further investigations into any other?
It is found that there is support for that kind of allegation, which would result in great discomfort to the national community. There would be a need for a response. Is that clear enough for you?
Concerning him, it seems to have come to a conclusion. He has not been convicted of any offense. He was detained and subsequently released during the SOE and sued the state. Is this something that are you aware of any other details of
I am not prepared to go into any debate with Mr. Burke or any citizen, all of whom have entrance rights under the Constitution to live in this country without certain kinds of harassment or whatever. However, I simply want to say to the national community that in treating with the matter of safety, security, crime and criminality and the comfort of our citizens, I hold the office of Chairman of the National Security Council, and I may have a little more information on these matters than any other citizen. That's all I'm prepared to say on that matter.
Also, why did you advise the President the public utilities portfolio should go to you?
Because I can do a lot more work than I do now. That's what you think. No, it's a ministry has been vacated, and I required to have someone take responsibility for that ministry, and I saw it fit to take it myself. I never ask anybody to do anything that I wouldn't do myself.
Or were you concerned, Prime Minister, that if you did pick someone else, you may have faced another controversy?
There's always a possibility. I mean, if I have how many other ministers I have, and how many actions I may take in the future, there's no guarantee that your action will come. I thought I said so early on, there's no guarantee that the action you take will deliver the result that you anticipate. But you do certain things to give you a good chance that you will get the outcome that you anticipate when you take that action.
Prime Minister, 6 ministers in 2 ministries.
What's that?
6 ministers in 2 ministries, quote unquote.
What is it? I don't understand.
There are 2 ministers in the office of the Attorney General and the other ministry. Could you tell us exactly, are you having a problem finding talented persons to fill?
No, sir. It is because I was finding talent why I found 6 to put in there. This is work. These are workload arrangements. Okay? Where you have a huge workload, you put a larger number of people. Okay? And sometimes the workload increases, it grows based on what you are engaged in. So counting the ministers in the ministry is not really a good reflection of anything other than the workload of these particular ministries. And I thought I explained that the other day, that the Attorney General's office is an area where we are pursuing an aggressive work program to get some results in the shortest possible time. And the other one is the Ministry of Finance. And if you look at the 2 issues that are the greatest challenge in Trinidad and Tobago, one is safety and security. And the legislative program that we are pursuing in the coming months would be one that focuses very heavily on those matters, along with others. And of course, the Ministry of Finance, I outlined to you how we are dealing with the state enterprise sector, the BIR, and the whole question of the tax management in Trinidad and Tobago. So it's a workload thing. And I think the talent that we have in the cabinet can measure up to any that was in any other cabinet before, notwithstanding. And when the Prime Minister talks about, the last Prime Minister talked about who can't find talent, I would like to engage a debate with her and match the talent in this cabinet with some of the people that she appointed to her cabinet.
Prime Minister, before you have informed Ms. McDonald that the appointment to the cabinet will be revoked, did you at any point request that she step down voluntarily?
I spoke with Ms. McDonald on this matter as soon as it came to my attention. I attended that swearing in. I left it promptly as the documentation was completed and the official photographs were taken, so I had no idea that anything else had gone on. I then traveled to Tobago on Friday night, and at about 7:45 on Friday night, I realized I was informed of these developments. I immediately sought to communicate with Ms. McDonald. I wasn't able to communicate with her until about midnight, and we had some discussions on the matter, and I expressed my concern, and I indicated to her on Friday night how I intended to deal with it.
Forgive me, with all due respect, Prime Minister, the question I did pose is, did you request that she voluntarily step down before you informed her her appointment would be revoked?
Well, she had that option. I mean, that option was always available. I mean, when matters like this, what's the word? I just can't back out. When matters like this are in the process of coming out, the word just escapes me. However, when I expressed my concern, the option of resignation is always there. And in these matters, that is always how one deals with it, providing you agree. But the bottom line is, at the end of the day, the Prime Minister, which the office I hold, had to. I could not turn a blind eye to that development.
So, Prime Minister, given Ms. McDonald's personal relationship with these community leaders, and given that she held a substantive cabinet portfolio before first dismissal as Minister of Housing, will there now be a further investigation into whether or not contracts were awarded to people of
I don't know. I'm not broadening this action into that as a separate issue. Those issues are always there as we look at the general management of the country. But let me just make one thing very clear. All of us as MPs represent all the people of Trinidad and Tobago who reside in our constituency. So having in your constituency persons who may have questions to answer or who may have run afoul of the law is not in itself an offense. And if you represent people, you have to interact with them. But you have a requirement and a responsibility to ensure that that interaction does not in itself become part of the problem.
So there will be no further investigation?
I am not in a position to say that to you. I mean, these things evolve, and they are ongoing issues.
What would you say to persons who contend that it is an indictment of your leadership that you were not aware of the close relationship between Ms. McDonald and certain community leaders? I know you talk about interacting with people in your constituency, but interacting is one thing and bringing them to your swearing in is another story altogether. It suggests a closeness.
Well, these are interpretations, and I would not take issue with persons who want to indict me for not knowing. There's a lot that I don't know. There's a lot that I don't know. But as I said to you a while ago, the action that I took is based on what I know. Right?
But had you known, would you have made the appointment?
These are speculative things, and I'm not going down that road. About had I known and had I known this, I responded to a development that required an intervention on my part. What I know or what I don't know is another story, right? Because I am not here going to be having a press conference to debate whether I knew that who was going to come to a swearing in with a minister of government. I'm not going to do that. That is, the minister had a responsibility, and I try to choose my language very carefully. The minister had a responsibility not to do anything that would prevent the government from engaging the national community, those who are law-abiding and those who are law-breaking, in such a way that the government preserves its ability to discharge its responsibility to the population. I thought I was clear on that.
But that would have included having a general relationship with the flow. So
I have a general view. I have a general view. And as I said, all of us, whether it's in Diego Martin, in Laventil, in San Fernando, all of us represent people, some of whom may have issues with the law.
Prime Minister, Ms. McDonald is the elected MP for the Spain South. Given the reason you have said, without getting into more detail as to why you removed her from the cabinet, do you have any concern with regard to that issue and her continuing to serve as MP in the House of Representatives?
I have taken no issue with the people of Port of Spain South and their selection, and it remains that way. Port of Spain South has selected the person who they would like to represent them. I am not here taking any issue with Port of Spain South at this time. And, you know, one can carry this discussion as far as you're able to. I saw one person carrying it back to the screening in 2015. That's a conversation that can take place. But what has brought us here? A specific development where specific action was contemplated, taken, other actions followed, other actions taken, and I was hoping that I hope that I've clarified, if not all, most of it for you. Okay? Thank you all very much.